Hey there, workshop folks. Toolman Tim here, coming at you from the frozen tundra that is, wait a minute, no, I'm not. I'm on I-40, about an hour and a half outside of Nashville. I just left prepper camp, and what a crazy, crazy experience that was. There's never a thing more fun than when you get together with a bunch of like-minded folk that are into preparedness, survival, and getting shit done on their own. 1,000 people at prepper camp. What an incredible, incredible night. So hang out with me for the next few minutes, maybe a half hour or so, as I share my thoughts on it. And you guys keep me awake while I'm driving on Interstate 40. It's a great night. I left prepper camp at 6 o'clock. I've been on the road for 3.5 hours. I just crossed into the central time zone, which is great, which means I'm going to gain an hour because I'm running against the clock so I can get back to Camden for tactical response pew pew training tomorrow morning. I can't wait. I filled my schedule and I'm totally fine with it. So prepper camp. Wow. Where do I start? I don't even know. So first off, my friends from PBN, the Prepper Broadcast Network, known them for a while now, about a year now, and finally got to meet them in person. Got to give each and every one of them a hug and a handshake, and it was incredible. I remember, this is a pretty neat story, and I got to share it with you guys. A year ago, almost to the day, probably maybe in a few days from now, about October, I had just been on the Preppers Live on Monday night. Pappy Cannoli, thank you, buddy, out there. He was instrumental in introducing me to James on PBN. He sent me my name over to James, got me on Preppers Live, had a chat with him. That is a year ago today is when I first found out about Prepper Broadcast Network. And I was on, had a great conversation, and that's where it stayed for a week or two. But I subscribed to PBN in my podcatcher and started binging a bunch of stuff. And I listened to Dave Jones, the NBC guy, and I believe it was the glorious leader. We always joke about that, James. And I don't know who else it might have been, but they were chatting about prepper camp and how James had enjoyed selling coffee there. And it just sounded like they had such a goddamn good time. You could tell they were tired, but it was refreshing. You know, it just kind of boosts your soul. And I thought, it would be really cool. Maybe someday I'd go to that. I don't know. Whatever. If it happens, it happens. Because at that point, I hadn't been out of country to go to any event. I don't even know if I was sure I was going to LFTN Spring Workshop or not at that time, but that's neither here nor there. So a little while longer, James contacts me, says, Tim, I think you should join the Prepper Broadcast Network. And the rest, as they say, ladies and gentlemen, is history. So I spent a bunch of time getting to know him. We did a bunch of live streams together. My Thursday episode, as you guys know, has been on there every week since. Without fail, haven't missed. And then I showed up. And right from the beginning, Ryan and Colin from the Next Generation podcast, I could sit and talk to Ryan all day long. But what a cool father and son duo. Anyway, Ryan messaged me through the back channels and he said, Tim, I saved you a camping spot. So pull in here and there'll be room. So all three of us pitched our tent, two tents and a hammock all on the same lot. It was great. We had a lot of fun. Spent the whole weekend there. Didn't spend a whole lot of time in our campsite except at night when we slept, when we finally got back there. What was my favorite experience? I don't know. What did I do? Well, I tried apple pie moonshine for the first time and the second time and the third time. I tried some kind of crazy Australian alcohol that I don't know what it was. I got a picture of it. I'll see if I can find it when I stop. And then I tried some kind of friggin' weird drink called cactus juice. So if anybody out there has ever had it, try it. I don't know. It was sweet and anyway, just interesting. I'm always willing to try something once. Tried some Cajun kind of sausage rice stuff thing that was awesome. Phil and Gillian were great. They put on a huge spread last night for the Matter of Facts guys and invited us over to have a barbecue or fire pit, sit around with them. Had a ton of food, which was great. All I showed up to prepper camp with was a bunch of, shelf stable stuff like little poached food and beef jerky, pepperette sticks, some nuts, a little bit of trail mix. Tried to keep it as keto centric as I could, and I think I did pretty damn good. Except the one time, well, whatever. I had a couple of breaded Chick-fil-A sandwiches, pickles and everything. And I gotta say, this time when they were hot, they were good. Becky and I ordered them with Uber Eats one time when we were in Tennessee, and they were so cold that they were gross. But boy, if you eat them piping hot, they were good. So yeah, I had my fair share. Not a ton of anything, but I got to taste test a few different types of alcohol I'd never had before. So that was a lot of fun. Got to sit down with Jester from It's Doomsday podcast, which was awesome. We had a great time. We had a ton of conversation. Had me on there. It felt like 15 minutes, but I believe I was on for about an hour live. That episode may end up going out in his podcast feed if it ended up great. I got to say, I was inspired by that dude. He's former LEO who keeps his identity secret, just doesn't post his picture on the internet, wears a mask when he does things like that. But he had this really cool live podcast studio at the prepper camp. And I thought, man, this guy has got it all together. What a crazy, crazy setup. Well, this was the first time he ever did it, and it looked friggin' incredible. So I've got to try something like that. It's time for me to up my in-person interview game because I had a ton of fun chatting with people, and I need to make more time for interviews at these events because that is where it's at. Spent a bunch of time with Nate, the preparedness guy. If you don't know him, what a cool dude he is. He had a presentation this weekend. He's on Instagram and TikTok. He's very active on there. So we got to know each other somehow through those channels. I'm not even sure how exactly, but we really hit it off. We're like brothers from another mother. We spent a ton of time chatting. He had his kids there. I just loved seeing the kids run around and being fools. He is an emergency management specialist. I didn't even know you could get this, but he has a master's degree in emergency management. And so he opened up his presentation with, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. And you should have heard the groans. Of course, it was just tongue in cheek, but he talked about preparing like a pro, and it was great. I sat in on another brother from another mother, Joel from Fortress Canine. Got to see his beautiful dog, Maeve, and a bunch of other ones be so well behaved and then try to tear him to pieces all at once. Joel is a really good speaker. If you guys aren't following him in your podcatchers or on TikTok or any of the socials, you got to do it. Man, that dude is entertaining. He's entertaining enough. I listened to his presentation twice, and it seemed like a totally different presentation, even though it wasn't. You know what I got to think? I don't think I mentioned this yet, but driving here well after dark, somewhere between North Carolina and Tennessee, it sure would be nice to have Art Bell Coast to Coast playing on the radio. I may just have to bring some up on the podcatcher later on. Now, one of the coolest experiences, I got to tell you, I screw up sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to be absolutely honest with you. But I don't even know how all this happens. But if you go all the way back to Pappy Cannoli reaching out to me or reaching out to James and saying, hey, Tim needs to come on your show. And I did. And so through James and the Prepper Broadcast Network, I got to know the gentleman they call the godfather of prepping, Rick. He was on a show, and I'm like, man, he is well-spoken. I don't know the dude, but I need to reach out to him. So I reached out to Rick Austin, or Prepper Rick as he goes by, and I had him on the show. And what a salt-of-the-earth kind of cool dude. And we had a ton. You guys have heard the episode. I don't need to rehash it for you. So then from there, he's like, hey, Tim, you should have Survivor Jane, my wife, on. And I'm like, well, yeah. And her show was so well received. I must have got about 12 hugs from her at Prepper Camp. She wants to come back on and maybe do a Valentine's Day episode or something. Anyway, so that was the next connection. Had her on. And then from there, of course, I'm like, well, I really like Rick and Jane. They're awesome. And I've heard about this Prepper Camp thing. So I bought a ticket. Didn't even tell anybody, just bought a ticket. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to prepper camp. And then I'm like, you know what? I got a lot to offer, so I'm going to teach. So I did. Uh, this weekend, I might have told you, I spoke 3 times on preparedness, the art of home maintenance when help wasn't around the corner. Had great turnouts. Had about 50 people at the first two, and I had 5 at the third one. Because as a new speaker, I was the dead last speaker each day, which is totally fine. I had no problem with that. But of course, today, being the final day and being the final hour, a lot of people were gone at that point. But you know what? I put on my best damn show for them, just like I did anything. So go all the way back to Pappy Cannoli, trace it all the way through to Rick. One day, a month or so ago, I get an email from Rick, and Rick says, "Hey, Tim, did you see who the musical guest is going to be?" And he said, "Have you ever seen this video?" And it's a dude named Brad Skitmus. It's really hard to pronounce his last name. That's why he told me in his interview that he decided to choose some sort of band name. And it's 5 times August. And holy shit, what a cool dude. So I got to sit down and have a half an hour conversation with him, and he shared so much stuff. Wow, was he ever an interesting guy. And he talked about how, well, I don't, you know what? No, I'm just going to tell you the interview was great. The interview will be uploaded soon, hopefully sometime in the next few days when I'm in Camden. But here's the thing. Just because you think you get your shit together, you don't necessarily have your shit together. So we sat down and had a kick-ass interview. It was one of the rare times that I did almost zero prep work for an interview. And I didn't. I looked him up. I had seen his videos. This is the cool thing. So if you guys don't know, he did Sad Little Man about Anthony Fauci. He did, I can't remember the name of the song, but the really funny one about Justin Trudeau, holding down the trucker convoy. And he did an awesome song called The Silent War. So, yeah, that is that. And if you've seen the videos, they're going to crack you up. But he is like a political activist of his time, kind of the Bob Dylan. Anyway, I don't want to put him in that category yet. But so anyway, we had a half an hour incredible interview. He's getting ready to leave. He says, "Hey, I'll bring you back something." He brings me back an early press of his CD, which is crazy. He's like, "It's just a CDR I did, but here it is. I want you to have it." He signed it for me. And so I'm like, "Hey, I'm just going to check over the audio and everything, and I will let you know when I upload it." And he's going to share it out on social, which was awesome. And then my heart sunk. I got that sick feeling in my stomach because I'm watching the video. We had a beautiful background. The sun was perfect. And I had no audio. And I thought, what the hell's going on? Did I mute it? What? I only turned on one half of my lapel mic. So I was sharing, the only mic I had with me that was good enough for an interview was my portable lapel mic. So the mic we had between us, him and I, that I was passing back and forth, working great. But the receiver end of it, not so much. The receiver end wasn't turned on. So it didn't even pick up the damn internal mic of the iPhone because I had a lightning adapter plugged into the port. So if you ever wonder, you ever think, wow, what a crazy opportunity, and then you just fluff it all up? Well, this dude is such a stand-up individual that I told him, and he's like, "Hey, tell you what, I want to go see the next presentation. I'll be back in an hour. We'll do it again." And you would not believe it, but man, he come back and we sat down and knocked out another interview for another half an hour. And the worst thing, you guys wouldn't even know this if I didn't mention it, but I had to mention it in this podcast because what a stand-up guy Brad was. And then that night, he was the guest of honor. He played 4 of his songs for the kind of the awards banquet, or the prize giveaway banquet and everything. And it was cool. He's going to come back on the show when we have longer for me to interview him. I'll get some harder questions for him. But you guys are going to love that interview. It's about 32 minutes, and he goes all over the place. What a cool story. Sometimes it's fun going into these interviews blind because you just don't know what's going to happen. But I don't know, that may have been the highlight of my kind of prepper camp experience. Speaking 3 times with the same presentation. I recorded all 3. It's going to be fun to go back and watch them all and say, "Hey, that was different." But that was, man, this was a first for me. Speaking 3 times over 3 days. finding the time to prep for it properly as I was driving down here. Spending time with the PBN crew. We recorded an entire preppers, well, I guess it'd be just a prepper roundtable episode, sitting around the picnic table long after dark, just chatting away. And that might have been my highlight. Meeting some crazy cool people, pulling in to Tent City. That's what they call it there. It looks like a little FEMA camp where they've got, probably 100 tents lined up all together. And as I'm walking to prepper camp for the first time, a guy drives by me, hits his brake, slams his window down, and says, "Hey, Toolman Tim!" And I'm like, holy shit, what? That felt pretty friggin' cool. Not that you do it for that, but that was pretty cool that somebody just seen me walking and knew who I was. And he come up and shared a bunch of information with me. I had so many people come, met so many good people. There was a guy next to me. He was a smoker, as in he smoked meat. His name was Pork Chop. I didn't know him from Adam. Big dude, made me look small, and just stopped and chatted with me all the time. I just loved the dude. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to have a TV star on your podcast?" And I'm like, "Well, sure." And he goes, "Okay." And left it at that. And then later on, he's like, "Hey, do you want to have somebody who was on TV on your show?" And I'm like, "Well, sure. Who the hell is it?" And I'm like, I don't know. It was him. Apparently, this dude named Pork Chop was on Ice Road Truckers for seasons and seasons. Everybody knew him, and I'm like, I almost felt lost because I've never watched Ice Road Truckers. So what a cool dude. Anyway, we set up an interview for later on. Just a taste of a few people. I met a husband and wife who are correctional officers in the prison system down in the States. They're going to come on and they're going to chat. I met a really, really cool firefighter. He's going to come on and talk about a little bit about firefighting, but mostly about survival skills, just a salt of the earth. Incredible dude. Oh, met a couple of really cool emergency medical guys that are going to come at things from a different experience. They're going to come on, set up some tentative dates with a bunch of my PBN co-hosts. They're going to come on. Driving out tonight was a crazy experience. So first off, I knew that my time was going to be tight and that I needed to get to Camden tonight, and I didn't want to be on the road all friggin' night. And the last thing that the hosts and everybody does is as you finish your final, if you're the last one of the day, you fold all the chairs up so that they're there in place. And so we got about half of them done before I started speaking. Then I did my show, finished up about 15 minutes early. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get my chairs folded up and hit the road. And if my brother Joel didn't come over there and say, "Tim, you get the fuck out of here and get on the road. I got them for you, brother." Well, that melted my heart. That was worth a lot. I mean, I'm making great time because of it, but what an awesome dude to do that. It meant the world to me. Him and his wife, great people. Support him. I mean it. It's not a commercial for Joel, but wow, support him. I don't know if I've let the cat out of the bag yet, but Joel is going to become my first official sponsor on the podcast, which is really cool too. So coming out, one of the neat experiences leaving prepper camp is as soon as you get on the interstate, you start going through the Smoky Mountains, which are cool. They're not the Rockies, but boy, I gotta say, in some places, the road, the interstate that goes through it is tighter and narrower and twistier than anything I've been through to the Rockies so far. But the mountains aren't as much, but they put everything's really compact, and there's some pretty cool tunnels that you end up going through, two of them anyway. So I come through one tunnel, took a pretty cool video, probably shouldn't have, but anyway, as I came through that tunnel, about 5 minutes after that, I come through and the rain just opens up. I'm looking up and you're way down in this valley, and you can see the mountains, and you can see these dark, nasty friggin' clouds coming in, and they are just, you're like, man, those look angry. And it had been talking all weekend of a chance of thunder showers. Nothing serious, but just a chance. And I'm like, well, okay, here we are. And just, a couple of minutes outside that tunnel, I come out and the friggin' skies open up. I am not exaggerating when I say it was the worst rain I've ever driven in, to the point where the entire interstate hit the brakes, put the four ways on, and pulled off to the side of the road. And the cool thing was, well, I couldn't see a thing. I literally, it was a sheet, it was, limbs were coming down. The rain sounded like hail, thunder and lightning up in the mountains above me. And where I pulled over, right there, I look ahead and it says rest stop, pull in here. So I pull in, I think, well, I wonder how long this is going to take. So I bring up the radar map and it said, 2 or 3 minutes it was going to be through. And I thought, you know what? It's starting to slow down a little bit. I'll just put my four ways on an inch ahead, keep making miles until I pass through. And about 5 minutes later, I'm through the rain. And about 20 minutes later, I'm back on dry pave. But it was pretty incredible. I was thinking, am I in for a tornado or something? Give me a little, not a fright, but boy, did it ever, it was something. I got a little bit of fog now where I am, but it wasn't that bad. So why do I go to events like Prepper Camp? Well, first off for me, I took some patches with me and I went to promote the Patch of the Month Club and that kind of stuff. But that's not why I go. That's not where I get my joy. I probably, so when you're a presenter, you automatically get a booth, which is great. So you have a booth, and if you want to, you can camp behind the booth. But I like camping over in Tent City. It was a lot of fun. But if you have a booth, you get to set up your stuff and sell your wares if you want to, or sit there and wait for people to come to you and chat, which I did. Accident ahead, left lane closed. Well, I guess I got to get in the right lane then. So, like I said, why do I go to Prepper Camp? It sure as shit isn't to sell stuff, because a lot of people do sell stuff there, but I have no interest in, if I sell stuff, great, but that's not why I go. Do I go to present? Yeah, I like it. It sharpens my speaking skills. It helps me get better at public speaking and being a teacher and all of that, which is great. But that's not the reason. The reason I go, for a couple. Number one is the conversations after you get done speaking. You always have 4 or 5 people who come over and wait to talk to you, and they want to share their story about how they rebuilt, and if you're listening to this, you'll know who you are, how they built or rebuilt an old bus that they're living out of, and they're so damn proud of it, and how they started off insecure about some of this stuff, and now they're kicking ass and taking names. Or, other people who are just getting started and just doing a little bit, and they didn't know what to do, and the preparedness talk give them just a little bit of motivation. And then the biggest reason I get out of this is networking. That's what it is. There's so much networking that happens. I spent innumerable, that's the word, guys. I spent a ton of time chatting with everybody in the preparedness field. I have a list of phone numbers. So I learned this time. I opened up a notepad in my phone and I put phone numbers and names and potential topics for show topics in there. And I've got 10 or 12 right now, which is awesome because that's what I went for. Had some good chats. We're going to have Forrest from PrepperNet. He's going to come on, which will be great. And just a whole bunch more. So that, to me, is the reason. That's why I drive 3,400 kilometers, 34 hours total drive time each way in order to sit down and chat with people in real life. That's what I'm looking for. I want to have the connections. I want to sit down. I want to make the relationships. I had a couple of people mention to me that they, if we ever need a place to stay, if things ever get too bad where we live, north of the border, that we are more than welcome to go and stay with them for as long as needed. Everybody knows our plan is to buy land in Tennessee. Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm letting the cat out of the bag. But eventually, spend a month down there. And if we love it, spend 2 months. And then eventually spend, half the year down there so that we have a quote unquote vacation property. That's what we want. We want a place where we can be, if we need to, get away, and maybe get away, if you know what I mean. But to me, that's what it's all about. I love coming down here. I'm stoked. I should be friggin' exhausted. I slept in a tent on a folding cot for 3 days, and surprisingly, I feel great. I figured that. I did a lot of research. I'm going to do a review on that damn cot that I ordered, guys, because I put in cots for big boys, and this thing come back, and it was rated for like 450 pounds, and it was 84 inches long, so what's that, 7 feet? And this thing was surprisingly comfortable. Once I figured out, the first night you figure out which way to sleep on it, I was great. I never lacked for sleep. I slept a lot while we were there. I stayed up late. Fresh air makes you tired, of course. Ton of walking at prepper camp, which, whatever, that's no big deal. I enjoyed it. The weather, that's the other thing I wanted to mention, because there have been years when prepper camp was nothing but a monsoon. There's a lake there, which, can it flood or not flood, whatever, yes, but it's a very low-lying area where you teach and where you have prepper mall where everybody walks through. Very low-lying. And there's been years where it has gotten incredibly wet, inches and inches of rain. And there was, a week or so before camp, or maybe 2 weeks before camp, there was, the threat of a possible hurricane landing and a ton of rain, and it just didn't happen. Thank goodness. It was just, yeah, it was incredible. We had sunshine. I think we saw 17 raindrops while I was there. Maybe 18. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that might have been about it. but it wasn't too hot. The only day that was above 30 degrees Celsius, which would have been what's that, about 90? I don't know. Somebody do the math for me and correct me in the notes, or on a boostergram and fountain, whatever. But yeah, the only day was Thursday when I got there to set up. I think my only regret, no, it's not a regret, but I showed up about mid-afternoon on Thursday. I wish I'd have been there friggin' first thing in the morning. I should have drove ahead and spent the night in Saluda, which reminded me so much of the towns that William Fortune writes about in 1 Second After. He said these were, and we weren't that far from where he lives, but North Carolina mountain towns that looked like Norman Rockwell painted them. And that's exactly what Saluda looked like. It reminded me of a little town in Nova Scotia where I grew up called Bear River, but on steroids. It was just that friggin' gorgeous. It was beautiful. The road that you took to get into prepper camp was like a friggin', like a snake path. It was one of the twistiest and turniest roads I had ever had. As far as food goes, like I said, I didn't eat a lot, but the cool thing was they had a Chick-fil-A food truck there that they brought a ton of sandwiches and all the other stuff. So that was really neat. Got to experience that again. And I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but when you go to prepper camp, I didn't know this at all, but they give a gift to all of the presenters. So they called us all up in front of a crowd of, it must have been 700 or 800 people. It was massive. And they give me the most beautiful, I don't want to put a value on it, but this thing was beautiful. And it was engraved or embossed with Prepper Camp 2022 on it. And that is an absolute honor. That is going to go in a place of honor at home. And James had done up these cool little, I will show you them, but he's working with a guy who uses recycled ocean plastics to make fishing lures and stuff. And he had him 3D print or mold these little Prepper Broadcast Network. They almost look like mini trophies, but they're little pieces that'll sit on a shelf. So as I work on my background for my upcoming live stream backgrounds, I'm going to redo that this winter. That's going to get in there. So yeah, what a week. What a week. What a week. Oh wait, it was only 3 days, but it felt like a week. 4 days. 4 days, 3 nights. A lot of people are spending the night there tonight, leaving tomorrow. But it was sad. I really missed, you know these people, you get to know them online, you get to know them. You get to know them better than you know people in your own town or as friends. And then you end up having to say goodbye, and you're like, well, I guess I'll see you in a year. I wish it wasn't a year, but it's going to be a year, and that's okay. There was a girl there from Australia. I was really hoping to be the person from the furthest away, and she flew in from Australia and broke my record. I still drove the furthest, but that's another story for another day. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on prepper camp. I believe I will do another, well, okay, the next 4 days, I'm going to be at Tactical Response doing tactical pistol and tactical rifle, which is great. I'm looking forward to it. Going to get to my hotel tonight, get about 7 hours sleep, and then finish the rest of the drive to Camden. So I'll do an after Thursday. I will find time to record an episode for you about what I thought of Tactical Response. I'll give you a response to Tactical Response. How's that for a dad joke? Man, that wasn't even funny. About time for bed for me. And then Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is Self-Reliance Festival, which is going to be like a reunion of old friends. I can't wait to see Ken and Nicole and Carrie and, wow, Joel, who I just spent 3 days with, and meet Jack for the first time. I've chatted with him for years online and never met in real life, so that's going to be cool. And meet John Willis in real life, and Billy Bond will be there. Dr. Ken Berry's going to be there. Brian from the Lods Project, Scrambling. Brian from Scrambling University. He's going to be there. And Patricia from Unloose the Goose is going to be, or where did that come from, Tim? From the after party is going to be there. It's going to be a friggin' party. So watch out, people. I can't believe I'm not tired. I should be, but I ain't. So I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to have the time of my life because I have the best wife in the world who said, honey, if you want to build something great, you get out there and fucking do it, and I'll support you all the way. And if that includes an 18-day road trip across the fucking continent and back again with about 5 minutes to spare in between events, so be it. And if we end up when we end up down south of the border for a significant portion of the year, a significant portion of my year is going to be spent going around to events and meeting people and making contacts and growing the community and growing the audience and just getting out there. So guys, thanks for keeping me company tonight. I hope I channeled the spirit of Art Bell just a little bit. It's not quite midnight, but it is late, and I'm driving, and I'm alone on the highway, the interstate, and it's dark. And what better time could there ever be for the ghost of Art Bell to come back? And if you guys haven't listened to him, you got to go back and listen to some of his stuff. To be haunting the airways as you travel along, I'd love to listen to him. So I'm going to bring him on here when I finish up with you guys. So guys, thanks for keeping me company for, I don't know how long we've been talking tonight. About 35 minutes. I appreciate you guys. It's funny, but I miss live streaming, even though I don't realize it, but I do. I'm gone. For the first few days, it's like, yeah, I'm on the road, no big deal. But by the time I get back, I will be hot and hungry to get back on that mic and share everything I've learned. So keep an eye out for a couple of more ramblings from the road. I don't know what we'll call this one. Keep an eye out for my interview with Brad, better known as 5 Times August. And just keep an eye out for content. I'll bring what I can to you as I travel. It'll be a good time. Thanks for taking this journey with me, guys. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.